Hey, recording. All right. This is episode 16. Back again with Max, and I hate this. I gotta stop with this intro nonsense. it's it's the two of us. All right, but yeah, today talking about coming of age. Just gonna get just gonna state the topic. It's in the title sequence, or why I say sequence. It's in the title.
Yeah,
I'm
it's in
not,
the
I'm
title.
awkward.
I don't know. Yeah, it's totally fine. It's good that these are like off the cuff. I sometimes I forget. I'm like, oh shit, I have to be like super professional. But no, like
No.
who's gonna see this? Like six people probably.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna get canceled someday. Someone's
Yeah.
gonna look back on coming of age, just being like, "You talked about Boyhood." Me too. I'm just like,
Yeah. All right. So what do we want to just kind of like start off with how we both feel about coming of age movies, and then we can dive deep into like the specific movies.
that's a good idea. And I was thinking maybe talk about some of the themes that you commonly see in the genre. So
Okay.
you can kind of play both, maybe movies that make you think about those themes, and we can go specifics into the movies.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I guess I'll start. So, coming of age for me is probably one of my favorite genres, and I think I don't know, it's hard to know if that's just because I'm in my adolescence still, I guess technically, like I'm still learning shit and still going through whatever. I feel like I'm a young adult, so I still kind of have some like growth that I need to do, and I'm still figuring out who I am. And I think looking back on those like years of being like, a young kid and a teenager, like I think I still sort of resonate with that area. And I think that kind of reflects a lot of my work too. Like in a lot of movies that I like to watch usually involve some sort of like teenagers or kids. So
Hmm. Yeah, and I can say a bit of the same. I've actually noticed the older I've gotten, I've tended to relate to more mature characters. Or the
mhm.
example that I go for is when I watched the Before trilogy a couple of years ago for the first time. The one I related to the most was Before Sunrise.
Hmm.
That's kind of it's not quite coming of age in terms of age, but it does feel coming of age in terms of these characters are kind of having this blissful night that kind of grows them as people. Like they learn a little bit more about themselves and the world. So it feels like it fits in that genre. Like you're becoming more, I would say, quote unquote mature, but you're learning more about yourself, that kind of self-discovery. And
Right.
but I found myself the older I've gotten, particularly in the past 2 years, I've gone back to Before Sunset, which is these characters in their 30s, and I'm slowly starting to approach my 30s. That's a nice way of saying slowly. But
Oh man.
I found myself going back to that one more, just because it's kind of like seeing my future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like while Before Sunrise, it's reflective of my past. I'm just you're kind of interested in seeing what your near future is going to be like. But I feel like coming of age, it's also it does feel like a pastime. It's like the memories that you grew up and you're fond with that kind of stick with you, that kind of made you, or they kind of feel like these momentous decisions that you made throughout your life. That's kind of I think what's in the creative juices when it comes to creating these sort of coming of age stories. What are the memories that define you, or that you always think of, that still stick with you?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that it makes a lot of sense. I think, I don't know. Yeah, there is some sort of method to like the feel good atmosphere of it, I think too. Like you described it, I think as like a pastime. Is that right? Or it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like a so yeah, I do think that the most of the coming of age movies are pretty easy to digest, especially because they're trying to speak to a wide range of people that might have experienced this, with
Mm-hmm.
like Boyhood and Ladybird. I think those movies in particular, and we'll talk more about them individually, but those ones are very dated. You know what I mean? Like they literally say like 2002 is where this takes place, and then I think I can't remember where Boyhood starts. I think it's like 2006 or something like that.
It's 2002.
It starts in 2002.
Yeah, because it starts in 2002. It's still played over 12 years. It was released in 2014. So yeah, 2002.
Okay. So yeah, specifically, like it's like a kid literally lives throughout the 2000s and then some of the 2010s and then graduates in like mid 2010s. So like again, it's very dated, and I feel like it doesn't really broaden it to everybody, but for that demographic, like myself, like I actually graduated a year later in 2015. um it speaks to me, not everything about it, like I didn't grow up in a crazy abusive household or something like that, but I do think that it has like elements that we can all sort of relate to,
Hmm.
um or at least everybody in that age range,
Hmm.
um I don't know. It's interesting. I almost wanted to get like Nick Janaski on this call too, because he loves coming of age movies.
Yeah, he's a Noah Baumbach kind of guy and loves John
Yeah.
Carney. So like, yeah, so he's very much into Sing Street, which is the other kind of coming of age. But what's interesting about one, it's a musical. It's like a grounded musical where like, coming of age sort of story.
Hmm.
Mhm. But I love that you brought up Boyhood, because I don't know if I ever told you that like it's the movie that got me into movies, like to want me to make movies.
Really? So Boyhood to you is what Cars was to me.
It what like I always loved movies growing up. Like I watched Mel Brooks movies all the time growing up. I had watched uh I was the movie guy. Like whenever like every summer went and like we were going on vacations, they wanted movies to watch at night. I was always the guy that got movies together. So I always had a great time like going to Blockbuster, watching movies. If I watched a particular genre, I would want to see more of that genre, like Goodfellas. I was obsessed with mafia stuff. So like I wanted to see like every crime movie ever made. But like you never really think that you like have the capability of creating it. You're just like, okay, I like movies. Like, they're fun to watch. It's cool that people make them, but you don't really think you can make them. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I saw Boyhood where like this is actually kind of possible. It feels possible. Like, and even the director Linklater, he had openly said his favorite movies were like, um, it's not necessarily like you. It makes his favorite kind of movies made you think that you can make movies. It gave you that idea. Like you don't want to watch like, while Saving Private Ryan could be a great movie, it's not a movie that like that thinks making movies is possible.
Right.
Something like Boyhood makes it feel possible, where it's just like, okay, there's no epic action sequences or anything that it's very grounded. It's very much real life. There aren't any like heavy dramatic stakes. It just feels like normal talk. It feels like normal life, just like but on screen. And I like that. Sorry, real quick. And I
Yeah, go
like
ahead.
that you mentioned that it feels very much like it's very like representational of Generation Y, Gen Y, like that Gen Z time. But I always tell people, if you ever want to see what my life was like growing up, Boyhood's the movie. Like that is the movie. Like I grew up with an older sister. Parents are divorced. Mom dated another guy. He had two kids. So I had like pseudo step siblings. My dad remarried later than life. I have a half brother. I had like literally similar talks about like Star Wars growing up as a kid. I went camping. Like you had those kind of mischief moments of like with like your classmates in like the bathroom, or like you have that kind of like having a beer moment in your teens, getting stuff.
Yeah.
Like you have like, it's just, if you ever want like a Hollywoodized version of my life, that's essentially it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because yes, I can relate to it too, especially because I grew up in that time period.
Mhm.
Like there's a scene where he's like specifically playing with his like Game Boy Advance SP, and I'm
Mhm.
like, that was me. I was the kid at lunch that brought my Game Boy and I was playing Pokemon on it and all this other shit.
Mhm.
Um, but my parents never split up. My parents are still together. So for me, that part of it was very interesting because I got to see what that's like. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it seems very like it didn't seem relatable, but it seemed real to me. Like the
Mhm.
whole thing with the dad character, and like after they split up, um like the kids were kind of like they were happy to see him, but they were sort of like lukewarm on the whole experience. And he said something like, I'm not going to be that dad that like, only talks to you on like holidays and your birthday or something like that. And I was like, damn, like that's probably true. Like you can see it from the kid's perspective, but you can also kind of see it from his perspective of like, he's slowly separating from his kids, not by choice. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, and it's also like the struggle is that like the mom moved and he didn't exactly move with them at the time. And that
right.
was a
Yeah.
similar thing that happened in my life at like for a brief time. Like but not both my parents moved at the same time. And I was also 6, like as it is in the movie. I was the same age. So it's just
Mhm.
like, so it was like I kind of understood that like while like one parent was like both parents are not there at the same time. It just took a little bit of time for them to kind of work that out. But like, but I get that like one parent was distant for a little bit and then same with the other. So it just took, so like I kind of really understood that like it felt very much like real life.
Right. Yeah. So I guess we're kind of already on the topic of Boyhood, so we might as well just go like
Yeah, like yeah,
so
yeah, we'll go more into themes as we keep going into these films.
all right. So first and foremost, Boyhood is a very specific type of coming of age movie because again, everybody knows that at this point it was a huge like marketing thing for them, but it takes place over the span of 12 years, right? Making a movie over the course of 12 years. Like I want to know more about that process and what that looked like and also like what the not waivers, but you know what I mean? Like what happens if an actor not dies, but like like they probably have to sign on for a certain amount of time and like have to keep coming back in order to make the movie,
Yeah,
you
so
know?
I've looked at the behind the scenes for this, and there were clauses like that. So I don't know what would have happened if like the lead died, the guy who played Mason. I'm blanking on his name,
Yeah.
right? Eller Coltrane, and
Mhm.
I don't know what clause would happen with him, but I know there was a clause with Ethan Hawke and Richard Linklater. If Richard Linklater died during the making of it, Ethan Hawke would finish it. And
Wow.
even Linklater's daughter Lorelai, who plays Mason's sister, the daughter, she wanted to get out of it around like year 8. She wanted to get out of the movie, and
Wow.
and Linklater what her dad wouldn't allow it. Or just like I don't think wouldn't allow it is not quite the right phrasing for it, but like try to convince her to be like, just stick around for a little bit longer. Like it's only like 2 months, like 1 or 2 months out of the year. I'd like to spend time with you. I'm sure he kind of phrased it like that, but there was like a moment where like some of the leads try to get out, or like there were clauses if like something like that were to happen.
Yeah, like did they sign a whole thing for 12 years? Because like how do you even make a 12-year contract? You know what I mean?
So I think with the kids, it was all verbal because like it was just a handshake because you can't sign a kid for 12 years because
Yeah, I
these
was
kids are
gonna say
6 years
like
old.
there's just no fucking way, right? So I'm wondering if like they had to sign something every year, like every actor that came back had to sign something, or
So I would say, with the exception of the kids, yeah, like I'm sure Patricia Arquette and Ethan Hawke had 12-year sort of contracts, but like or like agreements. But the
right,
kids, yeah, they had to re-up every year because like you just can't sign a contract for like a 6-year-old kid for 12 years.
right.
Yeah.
And also,
So
how do you like literally? How did Linklater cast a kid that he knew that he was going to use until he was 18? Like people fucking change. Like I'm wondering if he morphed the story a little bit as the time sort of went on, because
mhm.
again, it was he saw something about this particular time period and watching this kid grow over the course of like the actual years that the film took place and the story took place. So I'm wondering if like as Mason developed, or like as the kid's name, the actual kid's name, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, no, his
Um,
name is Mason in the film.
no, I mean the actors.
Eller Coltrane.
But yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, did he sort of morph the character of Mason off of the actor's sort of like growth as a human being? Because
Mhm.
he does he gets a little bit more like, I don't know, like he develops much more of a personality as he grows older versus being like this, just this kid that likes to have fun and likes guitars and you know what I mean? Like I just feel like, you know, he develops more of an identity, and I'm wondering if he like morphed this story a little bit in that direction to sort of
Yeah.
cater to who he was becoming.
And I do have an answer for that. And the answer is you're spot on. So like what Linklater, all he knew was sort of like the beginning and end. Like he just knew that the beginning was like his parents are kind of being split up and they're moving. And the end was with Mason going to college. That's pretty much all he had in his initial outline. And the way he would make his, he would then what he would do each year is that he would call Eller and would say, what's kind of happening on in your life? You know, what's going on? Like, you know, like what are you interested in? Dating anybody? Like, you know, anything crazy happening with school? Like, I think like he took some representational things like the mom getting like, you know, a boyfriend or going back to school. He took that from like maybe something that's like representational with Gen Y, when you're kind of seeing these parents go back to college to get their degrees.
Yeah.
But I think like when he's talking to Eller in terms of him, like I think it's pretty much that you're seeing like him on screen. It's less of like the character Mason. It's really like his real life persona, just like on screen. And even Eller Coltrane has said like all my haircuts like that are in the film are the ones that I had like as a kid. Like those were my haircuts like that I had at that age. So
it seemed like very like this movie definitely had a budget per se, but it seemed very like off the cuff. Like they rolled with the punches and they sort of let the art imitate the life, which is very cool.
But it's kind of funny when you mentioned clauses earlier, because this just popped in my head. So and when he's like 15 or 16, he gets his ears pierced, and he had to get the yes from Linklater. Is it okay if I do this? Like he had to get the okay before he was able to do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, again, like the whole, you know, like what if he dyes his hair? What if this? What if that? You know, and the way that the movie was shot, you know, like it wasn't continuous. You can kind of tell where the story beats sort of shift. And I think that might be one of the shortcomings. Like I don't mind it personally, but that might be one of the shortcomings of the movie is that you know, like you'll have a beat where he's like 6 and then all of a sudden he's like, you know, a different age. Like it's very like it just kind of jumps years sometimes, and that's fine. But I do think for maybe a first time viewer it can be a little jarring, you know.
I can see that, but I was so engrossed in it, like I was so down, like and you know where the beats, I feel like the beats were very clear where the jump was happening.
Right.
Like, because when you saw like the different haircuts, when you saw the voices getting deeper, or like, you know, the situation, just like I felt like it was very clear when the jumps were happening with but I feel like you're on board if you enjoy like the kind of like the stakes of life, not necessarily like, you know, the high drama, just kind of like, you know, just you're just trying to like, you know, figure out what you want to do with college, like, you know, just having like, you know, seeing the cute girl at work, like you're just kind of like having those little things.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was like rooting for him the whole time, and I think that whole thing of like, you know, we keep thinking about story as like, you know, like I just taught a class on like storytelling and the way to like, you know, tell a story through a short film and like using the Harmon circle and this whole thing. But I don't know if there's like a very linear arc with Mason's character. I think that he sort of kind of goes through one maybe like once every year or something like that. But you know what I mean? Like I think it very much imitates life in the way that we're constantly going through different arcs in our lives, you know, and it's not just like, you know, there's a bow tied at the end. Like there's always another step to take. There's always another goal to reach. There's always another version of yourself that you can be in the future. You know, and so I think this movie and the way that the movie was made was a very interesting way of showing that non-linear like personal growth, you know.
I'll also say, when you brought up Harmon circle, I feel like it's forever in that, it's like pretty much in the search sort of category of the Harmon Circle. It's not like
Yeah.
search and like find. It's not necessarily trying to find like something tangible like a MacGuffin. It's just it's just, you're kind of finding like I feel like, kind of going back to the genre of coming of age, it's just like it's about self-discovery. Like, what
Yeah.
are the decisions that kind of happen? But
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I would just say, in addition to what you said about search, like the whole thing about like they're adapting to things that happen in this
mhm,
like new world, like it does kind of feel like Mason is constantly adapting to things that happen to him.
mhm,
Like his mom remarries, they move, or like his friends, leave him or whatever the fuck. You know, he's always reacting to a lot of different things, so it's kind of, it does sort of feel like that. It almost feels like I'm watching a version of myself, doing the
mhm.
same thing.
Yeah. And I like that this quote unquote traumatic moments of the film are like fairly low stakes. Like a traumatic moment for like Mason is when he got his hair completely cut off.
Yep.
Like it feels like, but it feels like it's not, while like the alcoholic stepdad is kind of like a trope. Like it feel like a bit of like a cliche movie trope. I feel like
Yeah,
the trauma of getting your hair cut when you don't want it feels very grounded in real life. Like,
it's
it
it's
just
so grounded in real life. Of all the things, like, listen, I can't relate to like the abuse crap, like I feel like that's a whole other realm, and some
Mhm,
people obviously can, right? And they maybe not don't really want to admit that to the public, but um I can relate to the haircut story. Like I've had, I don't want to call it like trauma, but I'm very protective over my hair and like the way that it's cut. Like I know that it needs to be cut sometimes, but sometimes I just do not want it to be cut a certain way. So sometimes I will avoid going um like to get it cut, and I only trust like a handful of people with my hair, you know.
mhm. Fair.
So like
Mhm,
that part to me was very real. So,
mhm.
anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I think uh I think Boyhood, like I I don't know if it'll age particularly well. I think it's very much a time capsule sort of film. If that makes sense. Like I'd be curious
Yeah,
to
I don't think
revisit
it's
it.
well.
I think I'd be curious of what it's going to be like 10 years from now going back and watch it, but like I just don't see it as like a film that'll age particularly well. Like it's not like a period piece. It's like stylized like say like Shawshank per se,
Mhm.
but I feel like it'll be treated as like, this very ambitious relic, this very ambitious like film piece.
Yeah, it's more like again, the older it gets and the older the demographic that enjoys it gets, the more it will probably only be enjoyed by that group. And that's totally fine with me. Like I'll watch Boyhood like 50 years from now and I'll probably
Mhm,
still enjoy it because I have those memories, right? Versus, like a film school student that might watch it 50 years from now, if film school is even still like around.
mhm.
um they're gonna watch it and be like, like watch it like they would Citizen Kane. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna be like, I understand why this was pivotal and why this was important to storytelling. But I feel like, again, it's not gonna be, like it's not timeless, which is fine.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing I'm looking for. I just don't think it's timeless, but it's still like a very pleasant film. And I feel like Linklater has an idea of how to make things representational. Like if you look at his other films, like Slacker, I think it's very representational. At least of like the time period where it's cast and at the time period and the location. Like he got
Mhm.
that like very much spot on. And again, that's like
Right.
one of its more like kind of like more avant-garde sort of plots where it just follows a different character every couple minutes. So
Mhm.
have you ever seen Slacker?
No, I haven't.
Feels slightly coming of age, kind of not at the same time. I would say like probably his most coming of age film is probably Dazed and Confused.
Okay,
Like if it's not Boyhood, it's probably Dazed and Confused.
that's
But like,
fair.
mhm. But
Yeah, I
like,
feel like
mhm,
just if any movie has like elements of coming of age, no matter how big or small, I'm usually invested, you know.
mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, and that's good. And I would also say like now that I'm thinking about it, Linklater has a pretty big filmography in terms of coming of age, like because he's had like, yeah, Boyhood, Dazed and Confused. He's doing something where like it's kind of like a Boyhood pseudo sequel, not exactly, but the way it's being made. He's doing like a Stephen Sondheim musical, but like the musical is like shot over the course of 20 years. Like the story is made over 20 years, so he's actually shooting it over the course of 20 years. Linklater. So he's already casted. He already started filming it. So he's just shooting like 20 minutes every few years.
See, that's cool. And I think we talked about that last time with Robert Rodriguez, how he's like making a film and then not going to release it for what is it, 100 years?
Yeah, almost got 100 years.
Can we just talk about how fucking cool that is as a concept? Like the whole thing with Boyhood taking place over the actual 12 years that this kid has lived. What you were talking about, right, with Linklater's other stuff, but like, you know, the thing with Rodriguez, I feel like that needs to become a more widespread genre. I want to see more time capsule movies, you know, like whether you actually make the movie throughout that time or you like make a movie and don't release it for 100 years or some shit like that. That is fucking cool. And I think that more filmmakers need to utilize the passage of time in actual movie making.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just I think it's more commonplace in say documentaries. It's very common for documentaries to take many years, but not narrative features. Like not scripted narrative that's where it's like you would like I think like it'd be a more interesting direction for it to go in. But again, it's a high risk thing to kind of put like millions of dollars behind for a project that might take 5 to 10 years. And like,
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. It frustrates me because yes, movie making is a business. But I do think that, I don't know, when you have millions of dollars to burn, you know, when you're one of those rich people, I guess, I don't know. I just feel like that's really when you can just do whatever the hell you want. But I'm wondering, like, do you sacrifice creativity because your resources are unlimited? Anyways, we're getting a little off topic. I want to go back to Boyhood real quick. I want to know what you thought of like the mom character specifically, but also how her arc ends. I thought it was a little fucking dark the way that they did it.
It is dark, but I actually watched this movie with my mom, and she highly related to it because while I was in college, when I was in college, I stayed at home. But I have a feeling she probably experienced something similar to that when I finally moved out. And that's like, you know, she's by herself. Like, you know, she's like, you know, single, no more kids in the house. Like, you know, all I have is just like my job. It's just like, and I spent like your whole like you're forever a mom, that's your status, but your role in our lives have kind of changed.
Right.
That makes sense. So like, you kind of feel like, so like with her, like she was, while like, yes, we're happy that Mason's moving on and graduating, like it is dark for her because she's now having an existential crisis because she's not necessarily needed the same way anymore.
Yeah, it's just like it makes so much sense for her character that she would be going through this, but it's just so, I don't know, for me it was a little upsetting that it was the last scene that we see her in, you know. I don't know. I feel like it would have been fine for like the second to last scene, and then we just see like, I don't know, just some kind of glimpse of like accepting that or something like that. But maybe that's just me being too.
So I'm sure they had a conversation about that, and I think the alternative would have been her dropping Mason off at college with him. I think that may have been the alternative, but I think they wanted it to be a bit more poignant. Like I hate to be using pretentious jargon, but just I think like they wanted like while like the overall movie is like optimistic and it ends in a very like uplifting tone that like we're finally like, you know, in this new stage of life. I feel like you kind of want that bit of like just little harsh moment of reality. Like she's not mad at her, she wasn't mad at Mason or anything, but she's just like, you know, part of like what Boyhood is, what childhood is like you're learning to become an individual, independent. And sadly, as a parent, that means like your help is not needed anymore. So it's kind of like the sad part about like being a parent. You love seeing your kids grow up, but you're as they get older, you're not needed as much anymore. They don't look for the same level of guidance, or they don't really ask like the same sort of questions that you have answers for.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, yes, it's fine. And I would say that I am kind of glad that it didn't end with her dropping Mason off of college, because I don't think that that's needed. And I also do think that that would take away from the story, just because this is Mason's story. It's not their story. It's not like this relationship between them. And so I feel like having the ending scene with her dropping him off, it just, it doesn't necessarily suit the story that they were setting up. Like, we
Mhm.
started with Mason, literally, that like bird's eye. We started with him, we should end with him.
Mhm.
So yeah, I am still glad with how it ended. I just think that, yeah, to maybe some viewers, myself included a little bit, the mom arc at the end was a little sad.
Yeah.
But I did like that she wasn't just a mom. Like, the whole thing with her becoming a professor and helping that one dude out by being like, "You're smart, you should go to school, you should do this." And
Mhm.
like, that changed his life. Like, that was fucking cool.
Yeah,
I
and
like
like
that came back.
and like I like that was a like they had to have kind of thought about that like pretty heavily when they were shooting the film, because that was like 3 or 4 years later or something like that in the film. So like they had to get that actor back. So
True. Yeah.
yeah, so it's just like it's a little logistical thing that like, well, yes, they probably like in that moment they had like, we had this little scene like we've written out where they're kind of fixing the house. And I'm sure Linklater had a thought to be like, maybe we could bring one of these characters back. Like, or like maybe that was in the thing that like if you're gonna take this part, like be ready to come back in 4 years.
Yeah, I really do want to know if that was spontaneous or not, because I think it works either way. But I
It
think,
does.
yeah, I think it would be even cooler for like the story behind the story if it was, like sort of a, like, it wasn't planned that way, right? And so
Mhm.
when Linklater still had access to that actor, he was like, "Oh yeah, you should come back, you should do this." And it also makes me think about when they were putting the movie together. Like, think about the, like, say they're on like year 7 or something like that. They're more than halfway through. They have like a decent amount of the footage shot, and I'm wondering if they're compiling it all together as the movie's being made. And I can't
Mhm.
imagine that they're not, because I absolutely would, especially because I would be wondering, where do I go next?
Mhm.
Especially if like the movie is technically an improvisation until like what you're going to shoot. Um, I would want to watch what I have of the movie so far and see like what I'm missing, or like what pieces could be included next.
Mhm. It's kind of like you're a television writer at that point, because what a lot of television writers do is this, it's very similar. It's like an improv, right? Like you have an idea of what the ending is, but you're just kind of going along with the characters as best way you can. And like
Right.
they kind of look for what seeds they've planted in the earlier episodes. So like it's common for television writers to always go back to those earlier episodes to be like, is there anything interesting that we planted that we could maybe bring back? So like maybe he did in that sort of approach where like, yes, you kind of made the film as you're going. And that makes sense, like, for time efficiency. So like, you kind of like, you don't have to bank your footage for 10 years. You're kind of got your short film at the ready. And like, if you need to cut, you could just cut.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just think that's so interesting. Like, the way that this film was made was, I don't, I feel like there's probably a few other films that attempted this, but this is the one where it caught a lot of people's attention, you know.
Yeah, I think it was just one that was just like a narrative, like a legitimate, like fictional scripted narrative. And like
Right.
because there was another series, I think it's called 7 Up or 9 Up or something like that. And
Mhm.
it's a documentary series where like and I think it's completed now, but they would follow these group of people over the course of like every 7 years. Like they would do like a 7-year check-in. So if you look it up, it's like 7 Up. They look at what they are at age 7. At 14, it's called 14 Up. They look at what they are at 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. They keep going for like every 7 years. They do like a check-in with these characters, but it's a documentary, so it's not necessarily like a feature. Or like not a feature, sorry, like a fictional narrative.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm trying to think. We've pretty much covered the basis of Boyhood. Do we want to move on?
Yeah, so like we could do Ladybird. Like yeah, like because I know that's one of the ones that we sort of prep, like we did some prep for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, why don't you start with this one? How much did you watch on this this rewatch before you had to stop?
Yeah. So like I only got to the midpoint. So like I think I got right up until like she started like trying to get with Timothy Chalamet. That's that gorgeous son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Oh no, like
right.
I sound like like I feel like John Mulaney. He's got a bit with Timothy Chalamet. He's like, my wife is in love with this Timothy Chalamet son of a bitch. I feel like that every time I see him. I'm just like, ah, you fucker.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but I got up to that point.
Okay, so what? I mean, you've seen the whole movie, but what did you notice anything upon this like rewatch?
So I was trying to remember the movie the best way I could when I was like watching it and like from my memory. And I remember initially when I watched it, I was a bit underwhelmed. Like when it was getting like 99% Rotten Tomatoes, I was thinking something really grandiose. And I think it was just one of those things, my expectations like were too high for the time. So like after a few years, like, you know, I'm like, I felt like I did want to go back and revisit. And the first half that I watched, like, I was really into it. Like, and I feel like, you know, it's in that Boyhood sense, like, while it's a little more stylized than Boyhood in the sense of like the characters, I feel like the little fits of rage of like that sort of childishness that you have as like a teenager, that rebellious feeling that you have, like, you know, it's very much like, you know, part of like the coming of age genre, just kind of like the childish feeling that you have that like, you know, you're like, and you're trying to also create identity. Like you're trying to create an identity. And that's essentially what Ladybird is. She's trying to create her own identity. And that's what's common in like the coming of age.
Which totally makes sense. Yeah. I think we see much more of that in Ladybird than we do in Boyhood. I think like Mason still struggles with identity, but I do think it's a bit more of like Mason is a much more passive protagonist than Ladybird or
I totally agree.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, totally agree.
Like she's much like things happen to Mason. Still love Mason, right? But you know, with Ladybird, like she's very active with like, you know what, like she like things happen to her, but she takes action to like she has strong reactions to things. Like the whole thing, like the first argument with her mom, and she like jumps out of the fucking car. First off, holy shit. Like I don't know
that's a great
why Greta Gerwig like I don't know why Greta Gerwig put that in that movie, but holy shit did it work. And I was like, wow, you know, like I can't even imagine doing that kind of thing to my mom. I don't even fucking know.
Well, like, and I feel like it also sets what like foreshadows what the story is kind of about. Like it really is like, you know, the mom like is really just trying to look out for her daughter, but the daughter doesn't want anything to do with her. Like, and that's just part of like being a teenager, is that you're rebellious against your parents, like wants and needs. Like you want to find your own wants and needs, but like your parents are telling you what they are, but you don't want to go with them. And so like the ending is kind of.
I was gonna say yes, exactly, like everything you just said. But you're also you want nothing to do with your parents, but you want their approval still, you know. And that's something that this movie explores so well, because it's like it's so fucking polarizing, because you don't want to sever ties completely with your parents, and you do want to like you want to make sure that you know that you, or make sure that they know that you are grateful for everything that you've done for them. But it shouldn't be that they have to like, I don't know, they have to like fight you to have, or you have to fight them to have your own identity, your own personality, and your own path, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and like, and I'll also like, because here's the thing, Ladybird, like, not a very likable character. Like, at least like early on, like not like like very very much a brat, but like, but in the way of
Yeah.
how you would expect a kid to behave. Like, it's just like very bratty. But like, you
Yeah.
get like, you have that empathy to be like, well, she's trying to find her own identity. But like, I think, but because she's so bratty is kind of why like you get that very like, you kind of get that voice. It feels like that voicemail at the end like hit better
Yeah.
if, yeah. So I so I'm very much like, I feel like, I again, like, I want to finish rewatching the film, but from what I remember about the movie and then it going ultimately there, it's just like, I like that Greta Gerwig kind of took this direction with the coming of age. You don't really see many female protagonists in this genre. And it's
True.
also the fact that, like, you don't really see these kids being like total assholes to their parents. And then like, but they finally are reaching the acceptance, like, oh, I get what you're going, I get what you're trying to do at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because I never disliked Lady Bird as a protagonist. I feel like for me, disliking a protagonist is pretty rare. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. I think I'm very forgiving of when a protagonist is like a douche. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not
Because
saying I
like they
didn't like
usually,
her, but she's just like, she's a brat. So just, it's kind of like
yeah,
what you
she
expect.
so
Yeah.
that I got. So I think
Yeah.
for me, yeah, like my first watch of this was also a little like I was a little underwhelmed just because like I loved the editing. I love that they just got straight to the point and like they only
Mhm.
showed you exactly what they needed to. That's great. You can tell that they cut a lot of shit out, like a lot of filler, because that's something I also want to touch on is like coming of age movies can feel very floaty, like a floaty type film that doesn't really seem like it's going anywhere if it's not done correctly. And I do
Mhm.
think that Lady Bird, probably the first like cut, probably felt very floaty at times. Like the pacing was all wrong and stuff. So like the editor had to make like serious cuts to some parts of the scenes. Like you only see them like with the theater scenes, like you only see them singing for like 2 seconds and then they're like rehearsing lines or something. You know what I mean? Like it only shows you what it needs to, which is great.
Mhm. And
Um,
one quick scene I want, like, that follows that is where like the mom is driving home from her shift and she's like singing with the radio, and that's like for 2 seconds and she's back at home. When you expect like a longer like time with her in the car, it just like, no, it hits straight to the point. Like, we got her routine. She goes from home, she sings a little bit home, like no messing about. Feels very much like French New Wave, like jump cuts, like only essential like information.
Exactly. And I really do think that that's what makes this movie stand out, especially because I don't think, like, I'm going to compare it to Boyhood a lot, but I
Mhm.
don't think that Boyhood has that. Boyhood has like those, it does transition a little like jumpy, but it doesn't have like it, this, are, you sit with the scenes a lot more, you know?
Mhm.
Whereas with Ladybird, you do sit with some scenes that are like impactful to the story, but you get straight to those, like there's pretty much no filler, which is great.
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember what I was trying to say before that though. Was it like, I don't know. I
And
think
you were mentioning like, well, the editing style, but like I wasn't sure if that's still relating to like, you know to both like to Ladybird, or like, are you trying like, I will just say, like, I will just say the editing also feels vindictive of the characters, um while like the editing in Boyhood, it's a longer film, but like it does feel much slower paced. But I feel like the
yeah,
character of Mason is just like a very like mellow, very relaxed sort of character. Never really overly aggressive. Doesn't like, it's not like very rushy or out there. Feels like he needs to go play. Feel like he really needs to be someplace. Doesn't really race. Just like, it's very like kind of go with the flow, relaxed, easygoing character. Where like you have those kind of jumpy moments, and that fits more with what Lady Bird's personality is. Very like spontaneous, like willing to kind of fluff some lies and like, be a little bit more like quicker. I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but just feels like more up.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. And I
Mhm.
do think that she comes across as more bratty. So that's kind of where these two films differ, is I think that in addition to the characters being so different, I think that, when they were casting Lady Bird, they were looking for that type of person because that's who that character is, versus Mason, where they just sort of cast a kid who was probably very interesting on camera and then sort of morphed the character to the personality of the actor, which I think is so fucking interesting.
Mhm.
Um, I think that the story and like the movie Boyhood would be so much different if there was a different actor cast as Mason. 100%.
Agree. No, without
Like,
question.
yeah, like if there was somebody like with the characteristics of Lady Bird cast as Mason, it would feel very similar, but again, like that movie would be so different.
Mhm.
Um yeah, and I think also like as long as I'm on the jumpy editing style of Lady Bird, I do think that that sort of adds to the way that she sees the world,
Mhm.
because it does kind of feel like things are happening pretty fast around her and she's not really sure how to respond to everything.
Mhm.
Um yeah. The other thing is, and sometimes this happens in the exact same scene, but the whole thing with like how you can be like super upset and or annoyed at a character, and then immediately after like you're like on the same wavelength as them. Like, do you remember the scene where they're like picking out a dress, or maybe you didn't get that far, but
I didn't get that far.
there's a scene where they're picking out a dress, the mom and the daughter, and they're like bickering back and forth and it's like, you're being passive aggressive. I'm not being passive aggressive. Da, 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 da. And then it's like she picks out one. It's like, ooh, don't you love this one? Like all of
Okay,
a
no,
sudden
okay,
they're just like,
I did see that. Okay, yeah.
okay. Like, don't you think that's so interesting? Like, apparently, so Casey has told me that she relates to this movie a lot because that's basically her relationship with her mom. I do feel like that is a very relatable thing. Like I don't have exactly that exchange with my mom, but I can definitely see how other people have that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I could see it. And I would say like I've witnessed those sort of arguments between my sister and my mom. So like yeah, it's like I would say it's pretty spot on. It's spot on in that sense.
Yeah, it's just funny. Um and it also kind of begs the question, like, how do you create such relatable scenes like that? Like how do you get an audience to go, that's me, or that's me and my brother right there?
I
Like I've
think
always wanted
it's got to be something that you're pulling from real life. I mean, like because I would imagine Greta Gerwig experienced something like that. And like
for
if it
sure.
wasn't with her if it wasn't with her mom, it may have been with one of her like sisters or like very close friends. What like so and like
Right.
maybe just applied a mother daughter figure to that scene. But that probably happened to Greta Gerwig to some degree. And I'm sure like she had a bratty stage or realized she had a bratty stage as she's gotten older because I had a very similar stage like that as a kid. Like I remember like 16 to 19, I was a total dick. So I
Really
total dick. I was a total like I can't believe my parents really tolerated me. I was a total asshole at that time.
interesting. Yeah, I'm surprised because I didn't know that version of you.
Like
So
no, I feel bad saying this, but like I think there was like a solid year I didn't talk to my dad, like for like almost an entire year. I think the only like I was a total dick. So like
mm.
I like to think I matured, but yeah, that during that time, like I was a total a hole.
Yeah, I think sorry, I keep yawning. Um, I feel like most people just kind of have to go through that type of thing. Like they have to everybody has like some sort of bratty stage, or like a stage where you're kind of an asshole to like everybody. You're just kind of like, for me it was definitely 16. Like 16 was that year where I just like pushed everybody away and I was just like locked in my room all the time.
Well, you
I
think you
just
have all the answers. You think you know what you
Yeah, or
want.
I just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I just didn't really want to I don't know. For me, it was like I did not want people to judge me. So I was just like, okay, you can't judge me if you don't see me and I don't talk to you. So boom. Like that's like peak teenager, whatever the fuck, teenage
Mhm,
angst.
mhm.
So
One thing that I liked in Ladybird is how she sensationalized events in her life. Like she's like, when she's like saying like, "Do you do clothes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do clothes." She's like, "She's only smoked once, like a few days ago." So like saying that
mhm.
she's like, a veteran, or like, or
Oh
she's done that
yeah.
a few times where she kind of like fluffs up like, like little things that like, oh yeah, like, I do this all the time, or like, are like, that blue house. Oh yeah, that's my house. Like, or like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly. I was just
or like
about to
you
bring
try,
that up.
yeah, like you think you're hot shit.
Yeah, well, she doesn't even, I don't think that she thinks she's hot shit. She wants other people to think she's hot shit, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
Yeah. And the whole thing with like, yeah, so I struggle with this in my scripts a lot too. Um, but the over looming presence of the social status, like there's, the poorer kids and then the rich kids. And she clearly wants that like idealization of, all this other stuff. And it sucks because every time she wants something, it usually feels like that's like a family, or it's like an issue with her family because she's like, oh, we can't afford that. Or like even the fucking like subtlety of like when she was showering and it's like, oh, why are you using two towels? You only need one. Like that's, I don't know. Like it's fucked, right? Like I don't know. I'm wondering if like those are like subtle details that she added like on her second or third pass of the script because
Yeah.
it needed more of that.
Well, like, and I feel like that's a constant, like, that's a common kid thing, like, or like view is just like, like, you want to blame your parents for not having enough money because it does feel like it's on them. But you don't realize that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're going to want to provide for you either way. Like, and you don't really need those expensive things to have to live a full life. But it's one of those things like, as a kid, you have that envy when you kind of grow around, like, when you grow up around or like see like rich families, or like, oh, like this, like, how come he's able to do these lessons and I can't? Well, just like, well, we can't afford it. It's just like there's that little
Exactly.
envy you that you have. And I feel like, that happens with kids all the time. So like very much so that I feel like that was echoed in here, especially with the whole college thing.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing with like she needs to get into the college and all this other shit, and then it's like even if she gets in, like they can't afford it, and then she's like applying for like what is it, student loans, right? So um and also can I just say I don't know if you got up to that part because I know you've seen the whole movie, so it's not really spoilers, but um when she like opens up the fucking college app thing,
Yeah.
when it's just like it, so I've tried to do this multiple times in my movies, I feel like, and in our movies too, like remember in Starved when I'm like reading the texts,
Hmm.
um I feel like in this movie it's done very very well where like you only see two or three words for each of the responses, and it's like regret to inform, right? So she throws that one away and then it's like, unable to accept or some bullshit, and then it says wait list, and that's when she's like super excited. Like that's all you need, and that's great. For
Hmm.
some reason I feel like filmmakers sort of miss the line with these, and I don't know why that is. Like it's so difficult to pull this off, and this movie does it pretty well.
Hmm. Yeah, like if you're, I'll go back. I'll definitely go back to finish the movie, but I'll eye up that scene, and that reminds me of another movie, like about like kind of fun, and when you figure out your college acceptance is kind of Rudy, where he kind of finally gets that kind of like cathartic moment that he finally gets accepted. Like I'd be interested in seeing that contrast, just because like they really took a long time to kind of breathe that scene out, where it feels like very rapid fire with this one.
Right.
Mhm.
um yeah, trying to think of like what else.
I think those are all just the major points that I hit for right now. Just like I wasn't really as prepped for that film was the only thing, but just
That's
but
fair.
I think that the main thing I take out of that film is the mother-daughter relationship. Like, or like just trying to make peace with your parents, but also like and or like trying to recognize your flaws during your rebellious phase.
Mhm.
Or like
Yeah.
taking responsibility, I think is what's important. Yeah.
I would say it's kind of a shame that you couldn't make it all the way to the end, though, because I wanted to see how you felt about the way that they ended this one. Do you remember how they ended it?
I remember the way they ended it. They like she's at school and then she ends calling her mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
like
I guess what I wanted to ask you is, do you feel satisfied with that? Because I do, but I don't at the same time, just because I don't know. I think this is just the way I am as a storyteller and a filmmaker. I want to see that like happy ending hug a little bit more. And I feel like, the whole thing with like the mom goes back, and you would think that there's this whole like embrace before she gets on the plane, but she misses her, or that whole thing. Like I do think that's much more true to life. So that's why I'm sort of in conflict. And I'm wondering if maybe Greta like had a whole thing where she went through a pass of like having that happy ending, and people were like, it feels a little too Disney-ish, like it needs to be more grounded in reality, which is fair.
so
But we never actually get an interaction with them where where they come to an understanding. It's all like she reads the notes from her mom, and then the mom gets the call on the phone, but that's it. And I'm wondering like how you feel about that.
So I actually think like, well, I want to get through it so like I have a new evaluation on it. But like from what I've been seeing so far and how I've now thinking back on the movie, I actually think that was the right move. And the reason I think that is because I feel like you'd be dipping into like a very cliche territory. While like it is a neatly wrapped up sort of ending to kind of have that feeling, but going back to Boyhood for a moment, like these moms are kind of going through like they're kind of like having like a new existential crisis seeing their kids go away. So like it
Yeah.
kind of ends that way with the mom. Like even though like she was dealing with this rebellious phase, her daughter's always arguing with her. She's kind of sad that she's leaving. Like I mean like your baby's leaving the nest, like sort of deal. But it's just like you're having your own identity crisis right there as a
Yep.
parent. And I feel like the character there and her character ends. Like I feel like it would have been broke like a little bit disrupted if maybe they had a phone call. Like exactly if she picked up the phone, I feel like the voicemail was the appropriate way to end for Ladybird. And
Mhm.
yes, while like it could be more neatly wrapped up per se, or like more like a feel good if they had a little reunion, like they kind of got huggy feeling, like if you want a little bit more, I guess. But I was honestly really okay with the ending. It like I felt like it broke up the kind of like expectations of what you want, because I think like it's okay to not always get what you want in an ending. Like as long as it's justified, it's got to be a justifiable foreshadowed ending. But it needs to. But like you shouldn't always get what you want. Is kind of like my idea.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I definitely think that it would be very, very cliche if they went down that rabbit hole, but I don't know.
There's
I
a
feel
part of you
like
that wants it. There's a part of you
a
that
little
wants
bit,
it,
yeah.
but for like movie sake, it's a story and you want to be original. Then like you just kind of have to be like, you got to
Yeah.
just tear
And
it, or like
plus,
or find a new way to deliver that cliche. Like it's the only
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
If you think about it, right? Assuming that these two characters are real people in a real universe,
Mhm.
they're mother and daughter. It's not like she's never gonna see her again. She's gonna come back for the holidays. That whole
Mhm.
like even the dad. I know you don't remember this because you didn't watch it, but the whole thing with like she misses her at the airport, and the dad is hugging the mom, being like, "She'll be back. She'll be back." Like that's pretty much all you need. So maybe I'm just sort of nitpicking because I did want to watch a little bit more. Like I wanted that embrace, but again, that's just me.
I guess. And just speaking off of personal experience, like I've had that sending away moment, like flying away. So it's just
Right.
like parents do cry. Parents do cry. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one more movie. So I know we talked Stand By Me, which is like kind of like our more ensemble coming of age.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's interesting because we don't have like a sole protagonist per se.
Well,
Stand by Me doesn't have,
sort
does
of.
it?
Well, like Gordy. Gordy is
Okay.
the like, well, like he's the narrator.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I haven't seen this movie in quite a while, so I'll kind of like let you take the wheel, sort of like how I did with Ladybird, but
All good. Like this is one of those movies that like I watched on rerun. Like I watched it all the time growing up. And it was like one of those movies that like the second, like I remember, like I think I was like 7 years old. I saw like some movie on on like my mom's television before I went to school, and I find out like a few years later it was Stand by Me. But I remember watching the scene with the leeches. They're like going through that pond with the leeches, and like I remember being a 7-year-old kid, and they're just like ripping leeches off their body, and then you see Gordy just rip one out of his underwear. I'm just like, and it's also like the first movie that I saw like kids like not much older than my age, but my age at the time were like swearing in movies. I was just like, oh, I kind of want to watch this. Because the
Mhm.
only other movie I kind of saw was like The Goonies, but like it's kind of more of a comedy. And then like this one felt a little more serious, like a little bit like because I was kind of like really taken aback. I was kind of like a little frightened when I watched Stand by Me for the first time as a kid.
So, hold on, real quick. Did they curse in Goonies? Because I can't remember.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they curse all the time. Mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, or like Data. Yeah, Chunk. Oh yeah, dude, they curse all the time.
All right. All right. Yeah. I mean, I've only watched Goonies once, but I don't
Oh,
remember that being like. I thought it was pretty family friendly, but I guess not.
well, I mean, it's a PG movie, but PG movie by like 80 standards. I would say it's probably more in the PG-13, TV-14. It's like it's in the realm of Stranger Things. Like
I
Stranger
was
Things,
gonna
they have
say, yeah,
cursing. Yeah,
like Stranger Things is not afraid to curse. So like it's just interesting seeing like what PG movies were allowed to get away with at that time. But yeah,
yeah.
you're right. There is sort of like a, first off, a relatability, but also a like a, it's very jarring when you hear kids curse in a movie, especially when
Hmm.
they're surrounded by other kids. Like this is just the norm. But when you think
Hmm.
about it, that's how it fucking was. I started cursing behind my parents' back in like third, fourth grade, and I wasn't
Yeah.
allowed to curse in front of them until I was like 18.
Oh
So
yeah. I was like 7 years old dropping F bombs. I was a horrible kid. I was like 6, 7, or just like, I don't care.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
Well, I
screw
mean,
it.
like I don't know how it was for you, but okay. So for me in elementary school, um, I almost never cursed, like even with my friends. Like I only did it with my brothers. Again, behind my parents' back. So they were the only ones that knew that I cursed. And I didn't even curse like that much in elementary school. I like made like, dick and fart jokes and whatever. But it wasn't until middle school that I heard everyone around me, like all the students just cursing left and right. And like you know, the faculty, like the teachers and shit in the hallway would still be like, watch your mouth, but like nobody gave a shit. Like everybody was cursing. That's
Mhm.
just so funny to me.
Mhm.
Anyways,
Well, like I feel like you need that in coming of age. Like I feel like you kind of need that little like when you're talking about coming of age into maturity, you feel like you're becoming more mature because you're using quote unquote grown up words. Like, oh, we're not
yeah.
supposed to be saying these, but like, but like, oh, we want to be grown up. Like.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be for everything, but I think in addition to that as well is like trying a cigarette or trying a blunt or something like that. I feel
Mhm.
like that's very coming of agey. Like you see at least one kid smoking something.
Yeah, like I feel like, yeah, that is kind of ongoing trend. Like just having some sort of rebellious phase. Like
Right.
whether like it's something simple like having a beer, smoking a cigarette, like trying weed, just like it's something around that realm.
Yeah.
Like, and you see that
Seeing
in all
what you
three
like.
films.
Seeing what you like against your parents' will. That's really what it is.
But like you also just do it because everybody else is doing it. You think it's cool. So like I think that's
Right.
very yeah. I mean like because you're just trying to fit in. I mean like I feel like for Stand By Me, yeah, that was easily just Gordy just trying to like fit in with everyone. Same with like what's Jerry O'Connell, the fat kid. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, like Jerry O'Connell, not no longer fat, but he was the fatty in that one.
Yeah, there's usually some kind of like if it's a group, there's usually a fat kid.
Yeah, but but yeah, like you see it in all three films, but like, and again, but it's just you want to feel more mature, and like, that's just what you do as a kid. Because I remember being 12 years old, having 12, 13 years old, trying cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Dare program didn't work.
Hmm?
Did you have Dare growing up?
Oh God, yeah, we did
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah,
Christ.
it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, not necessarily, no.
Yeah,
Well, it took me a little bit longer. I didn't smoke anything until I got into like college.
Yeah.
God, okay, not to go too off track, but that fucking South Park thing where it's like, there's a time and place for everything, Mr. Mackey, and it is called college. Like that really is how it is you basically try everything in college.
Pretty much. Well, it's like, for a lot of people, that's their first time of independence. Like that is like the first time you try everything.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, and you have no like supervision. Like you have very limited like no one. It's just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Like go crazy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But going back to Stand By Me, like what I also like about it, it's a coming of age kind of like mystery sort of deal. Not necessarily like detective or like, but it's just kind of like, it's kind of interesting just to see these kids just kind of like do like a journey, like an adventure to go find a dead body. Like that's a dark plot. Just
it
like
is, yeah.
These four kids, yeah, like like they're just gonna go on a journey to find a dead body.
But it does kind of symbolize that sort of like maturity. I feel like the like seeing the dead body, like that whole fucking thing, like it does kind of lend itself to being like this is reality, this is real, this happens, and you're completely unsheltered because there's no like parents there, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's at least what I took from it.
Yeah, and I'll also say what's probably the most impactful for this film in terms of like coming of age are the characters of like Gordy and Chris Chambers, R.I.P. River Phoenix. Yeah, but no, like when we're talking about identity, the one that you would go to for this film was River Phoenix because he was I don't know if you remember much about his background, like in the film, like the character Chris Chambers.
Remind me.
So his family they were kind of like, in and out of jail, like his dad, his brothers, they were kind of like known as like, the small town hooligans, like they were always getting in trouble. Like, and he's expected to kind of be exactly the same way. So like one thing is that he got suspended from school because he stole like money, I think from some sort of fund or like, lunch fund or something like that, or like cafeteria money. And and he did it just so he could fit in the expectation of what people expect from him. Like, I mean, because his family was like that. He felt like he had to fit that expectation. What he revealed to Gordy over the campfire is that like, I actually tried to give it back. And that's where he's actually kind of like trying to figure out his identity of like, I actually don't want to be like my dad or like my brother. Like I want to be my own person. Like I want to find my own identity. Yeah. So it's just like, that's what I think the coming of age comes from. While like you feel like more mature after seeing a dead body, I guess, but like the coming of age comes from the dynamic of like Chris Chambers specifically. You can argue Gordy when he's finally able to stand up to the bullies at the end, but like it's really like Chris Chambers, I think, is the one that has like the biggest character growth in that at that time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, definitely like this is a film that like I watched a lot of and like love the song. The movie was great. Rob Reiner killed it. Great director. I actually remember I wrote a paper on this film when I was in high school.
Really? Okay. I was gonna ask, is this for like Thomas Leach's class, but no.
This was in high school, but like it wasn't technically on. Well, like I technically wrote on the short story, the novella, but I actually just watched the movie. I actually just rewatched the movie and I looked at the differences between the book and the movie. Wrote a report on it, got an A. So I'm like, wow. I'll take it. But
there you go.
You know, that's all you need. Just watch the movie, guys. It's like, who needs books?
Truly, yeah.
But
Yeah, I just fucking spark notes to everything. So
but yeah, just I'll say for that film, like it's a fun, like, so I feel like it's a good predecessor for something like Stranger Things, because while like Stranger Things is inspired by like something like John Carpenter, like The Thing, or something like The Goonies, I feel like the whole edginess of the characters and the way they talk is probably very much inspired by stuff like Stand By Me.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, especially because I think they were talking about. I saw a interview with a few of the characters or a few of the actors, and Joe Keery, the guy that plays Steve in
Mhm.
Stranger Things, was like, "Oh, can I say what the hell here?" And they were like, "No, we got to save all the bad words for the kids, especially Dustin." You know, so like it was just so interesting because now they like curse left and right, but in like season one they had to like maintain that rating, I think, so they had to distinguish like who was actually going to say the bad words. So they mostly just gave it to Dustin, which
Mm.
I think really adds to it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fair. And honestly, like, I'd be interested in going back to Stranger Things at some point, definitely before the fourth season comes out.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually did so because I'm trying to write a semi coming of age mystery myself. And it does definitely incorporate elements of Stranger Things, and I would say also Stand By Me.
Mhm.
I need to give that a rewatch as well. Um, but yeah, that's where I am right now, is I'm sort of figuring out how much coming of age I want in my movie, and like how much of it is like, I mean, it's the
Yeah, I know what you're
I
talking
don't want to
about.
say,
Yeah, no,
but yeah,
I know. Yeah, I know where you're going for. Like,
yeah,
because I get like, because there are movies that are coming of age, but like sometimes they don't fit it. They're just like movies with kids. Like when I think about that, I think of like The Sandlot. Not I wouldn't necessarily consider that full on coming of age, but it's a movie starring kids that like feels like, kids kind of like acting up a little bit. Or like Bad News Bears is
yeah.
another one. School
Something about
Rock.
kid,
Yeah.
yes, something about kid ensemble movies makes me so happy. I don't know why. Maybe it's just like, I don't know. I just really like I ensemble movies in general, but ensemble movies starring kids, there's just something so wholesome about it, and like so intriguing. I don't know. Kids in movies are always just very fascinating to me. So
Mhm. Yeah, like, well, I'm just curious, are there any films that you've been doing for research? Like for your flick? Like you don't have to, like, no spoilers, but
yeah,
any sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
films you've been going back to?
So I've rewatched Stranger Things. So yes. So that's probably the closest to what I'm trying to do, but it's set in the 2000s, not the 80s. So it's like if Boyhood met Stranger Things, so like in that time period basically.
Mhm.
Um there are a few other ones too. So it's mostly just a bunch of like cheesy 2000s movies. So I rewatched How to Eat Fried Worms. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Haven't seen it, but you mentioned it.
Okay, yeah. I would give it a watch just because I don't know. There's something very like, again, very charming about it, but there's also something very simple. Like it's easy to digest, but it also has a really good story at heart. So that's probably where I'm going with this movie. Is it's not supposed to be like Oscar worthy. It's meant to more just be like something that's fun, something that's entertaining, something that other kids will want to watch, but like the parents of those kids will enjoy it too, and like like even like the teenagers. Like I feel like it's a movie that I'm trying to make for a broader audience. Um, and there were a few other movies too. Like yes, The Sandlot's on my list. Stand By Me is on my list. I rewatched The Sandlot. Trying to think though. There's a few other ones. Anyways, oh, Holes.
Oh,
Disney's Holes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
watched that quite a bit and read the books growing up.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's kind of again the vibe that I'm going for, is like that 2000s still kind of very cheesy kids movie, but then it sort of turns into this like Stranger Things thriller-esque thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
It,
anyways.
I would also say like yeah, it would be a little more daunting, but like maybe revisit Avatar: The Last Airbender, because that's
Oh, I
like
have, yeah.
that. Yeah, that feels like a bit like coming of age in its own way with Aang and the character Zuko. I feel like is a very much coming of age arc.
Yeah, for sure. I like that each character has like their own arc. Like they really took their time to polish every single character in that I was about to say in that film, in that series.
And, well, like if well, I will say it's probably the best Nickelodeon show of all time. Like I will give it that honor, or at least I'm giving it that honor. Like
No,
I
to
don't
be
know.
fair, it's one of the best series of all time. I will say that. I don't know if it's the
Mhm.
best Nickelodeon show. I might just be biased because I fucking love like SpongeBob and Danny Phantom and Fairly Odd Parents, but that's just me.
I,
And
I don't know.
Jimmy Neutron.
Well, we can have like I feel like Avatar deserves its own episode, but like I just
I
feel
think
like just I feel like just for the time that it came in before all these shows started getting serialized, that was the first, that was like one of the like early like predecessors to kind of get like you know more shows serialized, and that was like the first kids anime that was able to
oh
like
yeah.
kind of that was it mainstream here to kind of get more serialized.
Yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
Yeah, that could be a good like topic for next time or something like that if we want to write that down.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Avatar.
Pencil
All
it
right.
in. You've seen all of it though, right?
Yeah, I've seen all of it multiple times. Love it.
Good, good, good. Okay, cool.
All right. I think we're wrapping up here soon. Like we're probably like I think we're reaching like an hour and a half today.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But I think to wrap up, like what are like so like for coming of age, what do you think are like the key things that like you take away from it? Like when you've seen like these sort of films, like what are like your main takeaways? How do you feel like kind of like towards the end of these films?
With coming of age?
Like, well, you could start. You just stick with these three if you want to be a little
Okay.
bit more specific. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I'll talk about the genre again. Like I love the way that coming of age movies make me feel at the end. Again, like they're mostly very feel good, but they have like a lot of dramatic heart at the center. And
Mhm.
it does like it's a huge reflection of my own life. And I do think that after watching a coming of age movie, I definitely feel more alert of like my choices. Like I remember watching Boyhood for the first time and I was just like, wow, this is a crazy reflection of my own life. Like, what am I going to do next? What's Mason going to do next? And like, how does that reflect on me? So I think that's the strength of coming of age movies is how they make you feel at the end. Like what resonates with you and what do you leave with, like what do you take with you at the end of the movie. And I also think, so okay, real quick, just a little detour, but it's still about coming of age.
Go for it.
There's a lot of talk in the industry right now about how theatrical is sort of weaning off and also dying because like it was already kind of happening before COVID, but now with COVID, it's like accelerated because nobody can go to the theaters safely anymore. Um, so it begs the question, like, what kinds of movies lend themselves to being watched in like a living room, like what I'm in right now? And I think that the answer there is actually coming of age movies. I think that I have a much better experience watching coming of age movies not in a theater, like just alone at home and sometimes with other people, but mostly just by myself. Like I watched Ladybird again on the train, like on the train home, and like that was a fantastic experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like it is one of the like I'll watch any movie in the cinema because I feel like I love the movie going experience. But I will just say like for films like coming of age, like they're not necessarily always like grand spectacles like that need the theatrical experience. You can have an
Yeah.
enjoyable time. Like the way I experienced these movies growing up weren't at the cinema. They were just on like TV, VHS, DVD. Like they weren't like like on like an epic scale like screen. That's not what like, and I like that. If I feel like, you know, a lot of the movies kind of come from like these kind of humble origins, or like the characters kind of come from humble origins. So
Mhm.
your viewing experience, just kind of watching this kind of like imperfect way, kind of adds more to it. I don't know. Like I think I'm trying to find symbolism to watch to I'm trying to find this way of like symbolizing it. I don't know, in a shitty way. I don't know. Being pretentious right
Yeah,
now.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know if it's like symbolism per se, but I think I can kind of summarize what you're saying. To me, coming of age movies, especially if you relate to them on a personal level, will feel like home. So, what better place to watch them than your actual home? You know what I mean? Versus, say,
Mhm,
like a Marvel movie, like that doesn't happen to you in your everyday life. So, of course, you want to go to the big IMAX theaters to go see a big fight scene. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So, they're two very different experiences. So, it's all about like what lends itself to what medium or
mhm.
what viewing method. So
That's fair. That's a good way to think about it.
yeah.
All right. Okay. I think we'll just end it there. Like I think that's a good way to kind of cap it off. But we'll definitely try to get another track going sometime soon. But yeah, dude. Shoot me whatever you got going next, like whatever draft you got coming up. Just let me know, man.
Will do, man. All right, you take it easy, okay?
All right, you do the same, man. Cheers.
All right. See ya.
See ya.